Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 7 of Roshidere, or Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Last we left off, a new student was introduced to the student council. Or a new member, rather. And most interesting is that she and Kuze seem to be acquainted. You know, they might not know each other very well, but they certainly do seem to know each other. And seeing as how Ayano is acting now, it seems like she looks up to him. Yeah, things are getting interesting. So I guess the big question is, what does Ayano want to talk about? It's also interesting that she's very overly formal. So of course it's about the election because, you know, what else is going on at this school, but, So she's referring to another person, and okay, so it's Kuze's father, and I guess that's how Ayano's related to him. You know, maybe they're not actually related, but you know, that's how they know one another. So interesting. You know, I'm not sure how I feel about this. You know, a sort of family drama dynamic, but I guess Ayano being Suo's aide, like, that's an interesting aspect in and of itself, because now Suo has like a little gremlin she can order around while she causes mayhem. You know, I do find it interesting that they've waited 6 episodes and change to bring her into the story, but you know, I suppose you do have to introduce your characters one at a time. It's also interesting that partnering up with Alia is framed as a betrayal of Suo, which I suppose it sort of kind of is, but at the same time, I don't know. Do you always have to look out for family over romantic interest? I mean, if nothing else, at least Kuze's willing to take the problem upon himself, you know, like, don't pester my sister about it. If you have a problem, come to me. Now that's an interesting turn of phrase, you know, can I trust that your love for Yuki remains the same? And, you know, I hope she means familial love, which, you know, it seems like that is what she means, but, you know, With how Suo acts, you never do know, really. So I was hoping for something a fair bit more lighthearted than what we got, which is rather unfortunate, you know. I was kind of hoping this show would be more lighthearted, but, you know, it's tackling some stuff I don't necessarily care for, like all the student council politics and now this. You know, sometimes you just need a simple rom-com. And while this does deliver in some respects, I feel like it is failing by focusing on a lot of stuff that's far more serious, you know? I feel like it might be better if the serious stuff was relegated to, maybe an episode or two rather than sprinkled throughout the whole thing. Ooh. So now his friends are pressing him about all the girls he hangs out with, because when you think about it, the student council and just the people he spends time with in general are disproportionately female. Oh. Okay, so Ali is jealous about the magazine, even though it's, you know, not his. I guess this is the big downside of being on the student council now. You actually have to uphold the rules and do all that, which, you know, Kuze is understandably loath to do. Ooh. So, okay, it's coming up again where people are like, you know, would you ever date Suo? And he says no, but he stops short of saying, like, because we're related. Like, I get there's a bit of a family issue, but is it really so hard to say, like, we're brother and sister? It would be wrong for those reasons? Oof. Rest in peace, Alia. Everybody's just absolutely dunking on her. Man, you know, maybe this should be a wake-up call to, you know, change your demeanor somewhat. It certainly bothers her, but, like, you know, if it bothers her so much, maybe you should, make an effort to change your demeanor and be a bit more approachable. Ooh. So the poor guy stepped in it. There's no getting out of this, and, man, rest in peace, magazine. I don't know if he necessarily deserved that, but he certainly wasn't doing himself any favors. Now, it would be interesting if the magazine became a bit of a MacGuffin where the plot was centered around trying to get it back. I think that would be kind of funny, but it seems like, no, more of this family stuff. So, you know, if nothing else, it seems that this is really just sort of solidifying Suo's affections, you know. Oh. Wow, that's a turn of phrase, alright. Man, Kuze's really just gonna have to beat all the women off with a stick at the rate things are going. Man, like, Suo isn't even free from competition from her assistant, like, man. At least she's servile enough to, you know, be out with it and say, like, you know, I would never do anything. I mean, imagine saying, like, I'm willing to serve Kuze as a tool, you know? That has a totally different meaning when you're talking to Suo. Ah, boy. Man, Ayano is something else. You know, I feel like Ayano's almost doing this on purpose, just sort of twisting the knife a little bit. Surely she wasn't about to jump out the window, right? Oh, okay. Wow. Man, Sue is something else to, open the window, shove herself halfway through it, and then, and only then, restrain herself from screaming out loud. Boy, howdy. I wish more of the shenanigans were focused on Suo, because at least she's, interesting in that she's willing to cause trouble. So it seems like the polling isn't looking good for Alia at this point, so I guess it's interesting, Suo certainly doesn't plan to go down easy in the election, but at the same time, she's also sort of starting off ahead. I mean, I guess it's one of those things where polling is never as accurate as you want it to be, and it also doesn't tell the full story, but even so, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if all the laws hold true for student council. Man, she really is a menace. Like, man, don't I sound like a final boss? Like, I suppose you do, but I guess the implication there is that she plans to ultimately lose, and I don't know how I feel about giving up the plot like that. So interestingly enough, Alia seems to be not all that good at poker. And it is interesting to me that Suo is good, she seems like the type who'd be capable of bluffing and lying. I guess that'll probably serve her well in the student council elections, especially if there's any sort of debating. If it comes down to a debate, I don't think Alia is going to do very well without intense preparations. It is sort of interesting that she doesn't really have a poker face either, especially considering how she normally acts. One would definitely think she would at least be able to maintain a, a stiff upper lip, but I guess not. It's interesting that that's her weakness. It's also interesting that Kuze, the president, and that clumsy girl are all just sort of sitting around watching and commentating. Man. Ayano really is something else, just sneaking up on people. I get she's a maid, essentially, but I'm wondering, what's the deal here? Does she have some sort of special forces training or something? It's a bit too odd, Okay, so she's doing all this purely out of admiration. That makes it a bit weirder. So it's more like a childhood friend who's sort of lapsed into this position. The more she elaborates and explains things, the less it makes sense. It's also interesting that she also very nearly dropped the ball here and said I wanted to follow Kuze, but oh, wait a minute. Is Kuze keeping it a secret that he and Suo are related? Is that what's going on here? That seems kind of silly to me, although I suppose that would explain why he never outright says that's why we're not gonna date. So, I'm wondering if this is an instance of me being a little bit slow on the uptake here, but given all the family drama going on, was Kuze disowned, essentially, and therefore he's sort of had to cut familial ties with Suo as well, even though they still go to the same school. I guess that would serve to explain everything, but, I still don't know why you can't just say, oh, that's my sister. Even if only to explain things, not that you go around saying it. Okay. So Alia's sister, she's definitely leaning on the fourth wall here that, like, oh yeah, no, you're the hero of today's story, so I'll go get more beverage. Although that she's taking Kuze with her, that indicates to me she's up to something. It seems like she doesn't really do anything accidentally or coincidentally. So I guess the question is she gonna start interrogating him or what? Like, or maybe giving advice. You know what? I think that's probably more likely that she would give a bit of advice here on how to perhaps better coach Alia towards winning the presidency. Yeah, so it seems like she's really not interested in getting drinks for everyone. She really just wants to talk to Kuze alone. And maybe it's my imagination, but it seems like she has dropped the ditzy persona a little bit. Not that I think it's necessarily a persona, but that, maybe she's exaggerating it while around others. At the very least, she has the sort of salient understanding that Kuze's essentially giving Alia someone to lean on where she's never really had, nor sought that sort of a thing out before, and that, by doing it she would grow as a person. So that's interesting, that Alia's sister, doesn't want to compete. Like, she recognizes the skills and attributes of her sister and wants to support her rather than compete with her. Which is certainly admirable, not all siblings are like that. Alright, so she's essentially trying to help Alia by providing an example, I suppose. Like, you can relax sometimes, but, failing that, because, Alia doesn't necessarily have to follow her example. I guess the second best thing would be a counterpart like Kuze who could help her. Ooh. So that's a little interesting tidbit here that Kuze would feel inferior to Yuki were it not for her unreserved declaration of love that she constantly showers him with. That's interesting, because I guess when you think about it, she does generally have a lot of accolades and things like that, being on the student council and being generally well received by everyone and academically skilled. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, jealousy of siblings, that is an ugly thing, It is natural, of course, but I think the best case scenario is you just sort of grow out of it. Now, it's interesting that Kuze and Alia are sort of like inverses of one another. Alia doesn't want to depend on people, and Kuze doesn't want people to depend on him, but It seems like by pairing up with one another, they both might get what they need. Now, I suppose it will require effort on each of their own parts, because, change just doesn't happen on its own, but if nothing else, Alia's sister seems to be masterful at sort of nudging things into place. Now, Taniyama has decided to show up. And, man, everybody just wants to talk somewhere secluded this episode. Now, I guess the question is, she's likely going to be running too, and she probably knows about Kuze, so, she going to issue, like, a threat or something? Ooh, an insinuation of classlessness. So, clearly she's got a bone to pick with Kuze, and she's using Alia as an attack vector, essentially. It's like, yeah, you stole Kuze from Suo. Like, shame on you, you floozy. Yeah, so it seems to me that her issue is really with Kuze, but she's trying to besmirch Alia, and it seems to be working, unfortunately. Now, something tells me that even Kuze setting her straight won't fix things right away, because it really does seem like she's got a bone to pick. Already hearing the truth, she's like, yeah, no, I find that hard to believe. Why would you, just do all this whole political stuff when you were so calm going through the motions? And I mean, I guess it doesn't make sense from the surface, but then again, she doesn't know the whole truth, does she? Ooh. Okay, so now that Kuze's here, Alia is all but forgotten, Like, she's challenging him directly to Student Congress, which I guess is, a debate of sorts. Yeah, it's interesting that, Alia already is sort of, like, off to one side and forgotten. I guess proving that she didn't really matter to Taniyama. I mean, like, look, she's even trying to butt in, and Taniyama's telling her to stay out of it. Like, it's over, because Kuze was the running mate, not the main candidate. Yeah, so already this is turning into a bit of a cat fight. Ooh, people like you two don't deserve to be president. Imagine arguing morality in politics. I think Alia wins this one already. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.